What is going on, alpha males? Welcome to Alpha Male Podcast, the podcast where we talk about what it means to be a man the right way, with God at the center. Made in His image, strong, dominant, and in control. We don't apologize for that. Today we're going to be talking about Average Joe's bug out bag. If you're just getting into preparedness, being a little bit more prepared, people get into it all the time. That's what we're going to be talking about today. I am going to put in a short bio because I think it's pertinent to know who's giving you this advice, at least in a nutshell. I'll make it a short one and we'll get into the main topic. First and foremost, I am a Christian. That is number one in my life, serving God, following Jesus. Combat veteran, served in the United States Marine Corps and the Army. Also law enforcement veteran, private contractor, state rifle and pistol champion. Professional big game hunter and guide. If you feel called to support, check out Patreon. There should be a link in the show notes. With that, I am your host, Michael Milito, and I am blessed to serve you today. Okay, so this is intended to be after listening to Average Joe's preparedness. Because the bug out bag, the bailout bag, whatever you want to call it, emergency bag, if you're not into the tactical scene, that's probably a pretty good name for it. Contingency bag, something like that, is meant to be listened to after the average preparedness episode. Because skills and that stuff is more important than the bug out bag. But the bug out bag, as it's culturally in these circles known as, is also important. And I've done whole episodes on the bug out bag and the bailout bag. I'm kind of big on the modular concept, like a baby bug out bag or bailout bag in addition to a full size bug out bag. And I've done whole episodes. If you want to go, one of the few YouTube videos actually that I did, you can look up like on the baby bug out bag, like a video of pulling everything out of it. But that is not a beginner bag. There's a lot of stuff in there. And being circumspect, perhaps I should have done this years ago before I did that, because you got to start somewhere. You know, not everybody popped out of their mom's womb with a K-bar in one hand and a Beretta 92 in the other. Right, you got to start out somewhere. Where do you start? What's the bug out bag for noobs? Let's start with the bag itself. Especially if you're doing this on a budget. What bag do you have? Do you have an old backpack, book bag if you're younger, if you still have like a book bag from grade school or college? It'll probably be fine for getting started. What bag do you have? Do you have an old gym bag, duffel bag, a sling bag? Is it the best? No, but this is the bug out bag for beginners. So get the bag, right? It's better to have a bag and have your stuff in it if you have to get out in a hurry. You know, if there's a train derailment, which happens, and instead of saying we're going to do a controlled burn, they say you have to get out right now and you can't go back to get anything. You don't have time to gather stuff up. You have to get out or you're not getting out. Or any number of scenarios, right? Better to have the bag and have the stuff in it. Even if it's not the most ideal bag. You can get a better bag later and just transfer the contents. But get some kind of bag. Again, shoulder bag, duffel bag. I would suggest something with a strap so you can carry it hands-free. At least one strap. Again, a backpack is good also. A bag. Now, number one thing I'm going to tell you to put in there is probably no surprise, a Bible. You should have a Bible or some portion of scriptures, even if it's a small one, in that bag. What does the Bible say? Be in health and prosper, even as your soul prospers. Nourishing with the Word of God is important. I would encourage you to have some portion of scriptures, even if it's just like a book or two, the book of Romans, the book of Deuteronomy, something in there that you can meditate on and read. And people often think about these disaster scenarios as like, you know, running constantly for your life and escaping collapsing buildings or who knows what. But a lot of times it can be followed with a long periods of time of tedium and boredom. And having that in there to read is really helpful. And you might be going through some kind of crisis. Existential, internal struggle, physical, whatever it is, and the Word of God helps with that. So I'm going to say start with that. Now I recently put one together for me to keep in my wife's car. I tried to keep it basic. I'm tempted, like a lot of other people, to put a lot of stuff in there, but I wanted to keep it basic. So here's what I have. A very basic black sling bag. It's not very big. Not exactly the same shape, but it's maybe a little bit bigger than a basketball, to give you an idea. In addition to the Word of God, a good fixed blade knife. Now if you listen to the Preparedness 101 Average Joe's, whatever you want to call it, episode, you know I'm big on EDCing a knife on you all the time. But I think this is the place for a little bit bigger, more robust knife. Knives are useful. They're useful for a lot of things. From very mundane opening an Amazon box, or butchering an animal, cleaning a fish, or for defense if needs be. There's all knives, perhaps the most useful of metallic tools for humans, right? Have a good fixed blade knife on there. I'll give you a few. The one I put on this one is a Mora. There's a Mora knife strapped to the outside of this bag so it can easily be grabbed without having to get in the bag and find it. I think that's important. Mora knives, I'll be honest, they're not my favorite. They're pretty well known and well respected in the prepper community. The reason I put this one on here is a few reasons. It's light, it's inexpensive. They're not expensive knives. But get what you can get. If you have to go to Dollar Tree for now, or find an old kitchen knife that you're not using, a decent sized fixed blade knife. It's not ideal, but make sure it's sharp and put it in a good sheath so you don't cut yourself or whatever. A good fixed blade knife, I think, belongs in a bug out bag. All you have is a spare, folding knife that's a little bit larger than average that locks. I think locking is important. Have that on there. Another good one, probably one that I would recommend above the Mora knife. Actually, I just had a Mora knife lying around. The Glock knife. If you don't know, Glock makes knives. I believe they made knives before they made guns, and I'm actually probably a bigger fan of their knives as kind of good for what they are. They're great knives. They're light. They're a good all-around knife. I would recommend getting the one with the saw back on the back side of it, because it's an emergency bag. It's a bug out bag. There's a lot of dual utility there. But the Glock knives, but any number of decent fixed blade knives is fine. Again, this is a beginner bag. You probably don't need a K-bar on there. If you're listening to this, hopefully you'll share it with a new person. This is a jumping off point. You can upgrade anything you want from here. I'm recommending a bag for beginners, so keep that in mind. A good fixed blade knife. Also affixed to the outside, I have athletic tape. I use that a lot. It's good for a lot of things. You can make band-aids. You can patch up your feet if you're starting to get a hot spot so you don't get nasty, bloody feet if you're walking long distances on foot. You can ask infantrymen about that, as I was one. You want to probably stop that before it starts, an ounce of prevention. And athletic tape is good for lots of stuff. So I have a portion, the remainder of a roll that I already had on the outside of that. Again, so I can find it and grab it without getting in the bag. On the other side of the outside of the bag, a tourniquet, a decent tourniquet. And again, it's on the outside of the bag, and this one is highly visible orange. You may decide you want a more tactical color, but some things I think are good to be seen quickly. A tourniquet, if you're looking for it, and you or somebody else is losing a lot of blood, finding it quickly is important. I do EDC generally a tourniquet on me most of the time, but it's good to have another one on the bag, even have a better, beefier one on the bag. So having a good tourniquet, I think that's important. Okay, and next inside the bag, what I have is a decent flashlight. I'm a big fan, if you've listened before, of the $1 Walmart headlamps. Those are great. I would say have something a little bit brighter in your bug out bag. If you want one of those in addition, that's fantastic. And it doesn't have to be an expensive light. I would say a decent light. You'll probably use it, but a good flashlight. Next, have some cash, even if it's just a little bit of cash. And, a lot of times in the survival prepper community, they kind of, I think, overlook that. Like, what if, an asteroid hits and then the zombies come and then the Chinese invade? What if it's a slow collapse? Or what if it's just a minor collapse or emergency for you? What if you just need a gallon or two of gasoline and you ran out and you forgot your wallet that day? Or you lost your wallet? Or there's any number of scenarios where cash is good to have. And just a little bit, because I'm going to tell you where I want you probably to store this. But just a little bit of cash, just in case, for whatever reason it might be. Could be, hopefully not, but hopefully you never need this bag for any emergency. But it could be you're at a hospital for a family member or something. You just want something out of the vending machine. And not everything has to be, machine guns and hand grenade scenarios. A little bit of cash. And then also a way to purify water. You could do a life straw, you could do any number of things, but a way to purify water. Because water is heavy, you're probably not going to carry a bunch of it in your beginning bug out bag. Unless you live somewhere where water is a really pressing survival thing that's hard to get, like the desert Southwest or something like that. And that you might redesign your bag and have it built around a gallon of water. But having a way to make clean water after disasters, oftentimes dirty water is a major killer of people. Even a lot of times after natural disasters, dirty water, drinking it can hurt, injure, kill more people than the actual disaster itself. Having a way to purify water. So again, life straw would be good. What I chose is just some water purification tablets. You can get them at Walmart, I assume at your Walmart, at many Walmarts I've seen. Water purification tablets. They're tiny, they're small, they're cheap. Throw them in there, they purify a lot of water. Also do it on the go. Most environments you're going to be able to find a plastic container. If you're really far out in the wilderness, in which case you probably are not a beginner prepper, right? If you're out in the middle of the wilderness and you're 100 miles from the nearest road, that's awesome. I like doing that kind of stuff, being out in the wilderness too. But this is not the bag for that. This is a beginning survivalist bag, not an advanced one. You can probably find in most urban, suburban environments a plastic water bottle in which to purify water. You can fill whatever water you have, maybe filter it through a clean piece of cloth, and add the water purification tablets, and there you go. Also, fire. You should have a way to make fire. Now in this one I put a ferro rod, a ferrocerium rod, mostly because they're waterproof, they're easy, they're not going to run out of fluid. If you're not familiar with a ferro rod, a wiser choice for you may be a lighter. Just a plain Bic lighter. Maybe if you have some duct tape laying around, wrap the top in duct tape. Also, I have one of those Mylar NASA survival blankets. They're cheap, they're light, they're inexpensive, and they do work. I have used them on the side of a mountain in Idaho when it got really cold and I wasn't as prepared as I should have been. They do work. They're not just a gimmick. And they're small, they're light, they're inexpensive. Is it the best shelter? No, but it's a lot better than nothing. Again, this is a beginner bag. Also, because of where I am, I put in fish hooks and some fishing line and a couple of earplugs you can use as bobbers, floats, whatever. You don't really need those, but for other reasons I have earplugs in here. Little foam earplugs. But fish hooks and fishing line, if you live somewhere with a lot of fish and you know how to fish. Right now, I'm in Florida. It makes a lot of sense to have a packet of fish hooks that are inexpensive and some fishing line in here. In some other environments, again, the Mojave Desert, maybe not as relevant. But anyway, I thought I'd throw it in there since I did put those in here. A small multi-tool, or even a mid-sized multi-tool in this bag, I think makes a lot of sense. One of the more inexpensive ones, if you want to go that route at Walmart or whatever. Again, it's a beginner bag. But there may be a time when you just need a screwdriver, even if it's not the best screwdriver. Something as mundane as that. A small or mid-sized multi-tool, whatever brand, Ozark Trail, inexpensive. If you want to get a nice fancy Leatherman, again, you can always upgrade from this. On the outside of the bag, again, so I don't have to root around inside the bag and look for it, I have a good whistle. That's a Tops whistle. They make a good whistle. It doesn't have to necessarily be that one. But we often think, especially I think if you're in the tactical world, military world, survival world, about hiding and camouflage. But a lot of times in survival scenarios, you want to be found. You want to be seen. That whistle, if you're really low on energy, make you a lot easier to be found. Also, I have a pair of sunglasses, cheap, inexpensive, kind of the shooting safety glasses. It makes a lot of sense for this bag for me. And sunglasses, you may decide that's not really essential for you, but I have them in here. I also have a small basic first aid kit. I have the tourniquet. I have just a small, what you might consider very vanilla, tiny first aid kit. For the stuff that's not a giant emergency, for, slicing your finger or I didn't stop quick enough and put tape on the hot spots on my feet. Now I have a blister. Whatever the case is, a small first aid kit. And I also have something I consider very dual purpose and universal in here, and that's one of those neck gaiters. The kind a lot of people, myself included, used during COVID, and I used long before that. But like the 100% polyester neck gaiters, they're very multifunctional. Again, pre-filtering water. It's not the only filter I would use, but it gets the big chunks out if it's nasty water. We already talked about that. Also, if it's a really hot environment, going to like the Mojave Desert, you have water to spare, put some on there and really cool yourself down. Also protect your neck and your face from sunburn or the cold, wind burn, all number of things. You can make band-aids out of it if you have that athletic tape and that clean cloth. You can do a lot with it. It's a good multifunctional thing. They don't cost a lot of money. I think they should be in your kit. Also some string. I have some 550 cord. It's a prepper survivalist kind of favorite. Doesn't have to be that. It can be cheap manila or jute cord. Have some kind of cordage, whatever it is. I have a little 550 cord and I have one extra spare shoelace for the very obvious reason of, what if my shoelace breaks? I could use 550 cord, but just having a shoelace with the ends that are easy to thread through, that's a good thing to have, and I can use it for a lot of other things too. I would advise having some calories, some snack in here. I have 2 cans of sardines. That's a basic, and you can do whatever. You can throw granola bars, you can throw trail mix, doesn't really matter. Some kind of calories, and this is basic, so not like a mountain house meal that you have to cook and add water to and this and that. Something you can just eat. I've got 2 cans of sardines. Again, keep it basic. You could do any number of things, but I would suggest food that doesn't require preparation, that you can just eat, and that will store well in hot and cold environments. And then, in the main pouch, I have a Glock 26. And I kind of vacillated on which handgun I was going to put in here. But a Glock 26 for me, because I EDC a full-size fighting handgun most days. There are some times when I'm going somewhere and I can't readily conceal that. But that Glock 26 is a good size. I can carry it in a pocket. It is in an inside the waistband holster, so I could just put it inside my waistband. Whatever reason, I chose to put that one in here. Basic gun. And again, I know not everybody listening can or is willing to or legally able to carry a firearm, but I think a handgun belongs in a bag like this. If you can't have one or aren't willing to carry one, that's fine. But there's one in here, so I figured I would mention it. That's what I chose, Glock 26. I put a couple of spare mags, one extra Glock 26 mag, and then one of the extra capacity, I think it's 20 rounds or 21 rounds, full-size magazine. They're loaded. Gives me around 30-ish rounds. Again, you might want to upgrade from that. But for this basic bag, I think that's good. Now, where to store this bag? I would suggest storing it in a vehicle. Most of the time, depending on where you live. If you live in Southern California, LA, and you have to look for parking every night, and you have to park 3 blocks away from your house, and you may not be able to get to your car if there's some kind of mob violence, maybe that's different, doesn't apply to you. I was LAPD, I'm very familiar with those environments. If you live in Venice Beach, you may have to park blocks away from where you live. So in that case, maybe not. But for most people in the suburbs or apartments where they park basically where they live, most of the time, I would advise having this bag in your vehicle. It's a bug out bag, an emergency bag. If you have to leave, you're probably not leaving your house on foot and abandoning your car. Maybe you are. You don't even have time to go to your car to grab something out of it. But in general, if you have to leave in a hurry, you may not even think about the bag. You may be so stressed out you just hop in your car and go, in which case it's good to have the bag already in your car. I would advise putting it somewhere out of sight so nobody breaks in. It shouldn't look like a valuable bag. If it's just like an old looking gym bag or duffel bag or an old book bag, less likely, but maybe throwing an old jacket on there, especially if you live in a colder climate. A spare jacket is a good thing to have in your car anyway. Or under a seat, in the trunk, just somewhere out of sight. But in your vehicle, I think, is a good place to have this bag. Also not in the bag, but somewhere in your vehicle. Some water would be good. And there's a whole thing in the vehicle preparedness. I don't want to get too far down that rabbit hole. I think the bag should be in your vehicle. You may disagree, you may want it in your house, and that's fine. You know, if you only own one handgun and that's your one firearm, then you probably don't want it in your bag in your car if you're sleeping in your house. Assuming this is like an additional firearm in addition to your home defense gun or whatever the case may be. But that's just in general, I would advise storing it in the vehicle, because if you have to leave in a hurry, it's already in your vehicle. It's one less thing you have to go and rummage through and find and whatever. Or maybe you weren't bugging out at all. There was no emergency from your home. You were just in your car, and for whatever reason, you can't go home. There's whatever reason, a blockade, a quarantine. You just can't get back to your house. Or just time doesn't permit, right? You have to right now leave town. If the bug out bag is in your house, it doesn't do you much good. Unless you remember to carry it with you every time you go to your house and go to your car and go to your house and go to your car. I would advise you kind of keeping it in your car. The best bug out bag, giant, rucksack in the world doesn't do you much good in your house if you're at work and an emergency happens and there's no time and no ability to get home. And you have to get in your car and go. And you can't go home. Home, that area is where the issue is, where the emergency is. And that awesome bug out bag is not going to do you much good there. I would advise you thinking about keeping it in your vehicle. And this is very basic, and you may change it. And again, this is a jumping off point. You don't have to stay there. There's many other things you could put in the bag. I encourage you to. This is a bug out bag for beginners. And I hope that it's been helpful. Tactical tip of the day. Make this individual. And by God's grace, I don't have any underlying medical issues. I don't have diabetes, or I'm not allergic to anything. But just for example, if you are allergic to something, you have, let's say, really bad allergies or whatever, maybe have some Benadryl in this bag. If there's something that's really crucial to you that you have. Maybe for you that's like caffeine and you just can't function well without it. I don't generally drink caffeine in large quantities. I drink decaf coffee only, unless somebody gives me the wrong coffee. But you get the idea. If you need that coffee to function, just those little single serving packs of instant coffee can go a long way in that bag. So make the bag yours. If there's something that you really want, or something that's really going to make your life easier, like if you have just really bad allergies, having whatever that allergy medication is in that bag. Anyway, with that, hopefully that was helpful to all the people that want to be a little bit more prepared and don't know where to start, or don't know where to start on their bug out bag. And a lot of these videos are like everything in the kitchen sink in there. But hopefully this was a good jumping off point for you. And it's certainly much better than having no contingency plan bag. With that, your tactical verse of the day. From the book of Revelation. To him who overcomes, I will give to eat from the tree of life, which is in the midst of the paradise of God. Also, I'm reminded of a verse Jesus talks about fleeing. Jesus talks about great tribulation. Jesus also says many times, watch and be ready. And in talking about fleeing and tribulation, he says, pray that your flight will not take place in winter or on the Sabbath. Anyway, with that, hopefully this has helped us all remember to be prepared and watchful. And nobody knows the day or the hour. Thanks for listening, and have a blessed day.